From the early days of Borderlands 1 to the more recent spectacle of Borderlands 3, there have been several weapons that have appeared in each of the mainline numbered games. With the announcement of Borderlands 4, now feels like a great time to break them down and determine which version of each was the best and decide which, if any, of these should return in Borderlands 4 to keep their streak alive. For this video, I'm just going to start in alphabetic order, so up first is the Bitch. This SMG started off pretty decent in Borderlands 1, a Hyperion SMG with good accuracy and damage, but it was also bugged and had never got the accuracy or crit damage bonuses that it was supposed to have. Obviously, it was outshined by some other options like the Hellfire and the Double Anarchy, so it wasn't really until Borderlands 2 that the Bitch became a real powerhouse. Dropping from the bunker in Borderlands 2, the Bitch was actually my first ever Borderlands legendary weapon. Me and my buddy Alan got it on our first playthrough. We learned how to duplicate items, and then we both rocked that bitch right up to the warrior fight. So maybe a bit of nostalgia for me, but I love the Borderlands 2 Bitch. Sure, it's not the strongest option, but it feels good to shoot it, and looking back at it, it's kind of a bit of a miracle that we even got this gun. First of all, back then dedicated drop rates were like 3%. This was before the Handsome collection, and it was even lower for the bunker since he had a loot pool split by the Bitch, the Sham, and the head drops for each character. The overall drop rate for any item from the bunker was like 3%, which meant us getting it during that playthrough was like a 1% chance. And that brings me to the second part of the miracle. That drop is what hooked me on Borderlands 2. That feeling of a rare drop, something to chase. It was truly like hitting big on a slot machine. In Borderlands 3, the Bitch is decent, but it's far outshined by basically every Malawan SMG in the game. Hell, it's even dramatically outshined by the proprietary licensed SMG made by Hyperion. It's still good, and if you get one as a world drop on normal mode, it's absolutely worth using on Borderlands 3. But since the dedicated drop is Tyrene, and that's basically at the end of the story, I would not bother farming for it. So I'm gonna say the best version of the Bitch is Borderlands 2's Bitch. And do I think it should come back? Yeah, but make it strong this time, please. Next up is the Bone Shredder, originally dropping from Bonehead in Borderlands 1 near the very start of the game, and featuring a rare hybrid version that showcased just how significant the part system could be for the franchise. The Bone Shredder has always been one of my favorite weapons that goes burr. High fire rate, decent damage, easy to farm, easy to use, just a solid all-around choice in Borderlands 1. Now in Borderlands 2, the Bone Shredder drops from Bonehead 2.0 in the exact same location you found him in Borderlands 1. Just like the Borderlands 1 version, this is easy to obtain, but it now comes near the end of the game since you reach Arid Nexus Badlands toward the end of the story playthrough. The gun remains a solid choice, but it's still far weaker than the meta options. But here's where things get weird. In Borderlands 3, the Bone Shredder returns once again, but as a pistol. It also changes from Bandit, or in Borderlands 3 it should have been COV, and becomes Vladov. And it drops from Crush Jaw. Like, why not just bring Bonehead back again? He's a robot after all. You could just rebuild him and have him respawn. While all that just seems head-scratchingly silly, the Bone Shredder is actually pretty decent in Borderlands 3. Far from being a meta option, don't get me wrong, but it's quite good in normal mode, but it has a huge issue with its ammo supply. You are going to run out of ammo fast with that gun. So for me, I'm taking the Borderlands 1 option as the best Bone Shredder. None of them are really amazing, but on Borderlands 1 you can get it early and you can chase the rare version of it, the hybrid version with the save your body part if you are bored. Should the Bone Shredder return? I'm okay if it doesn't, honestly. I mean, we're going to a completely different planet. Bonehead won't be there, so yeah, I'm good. Let that one die. Up next is the Butcher. In Borderlands 1, the Butcher was a legendary Hyperion shotgun that really just didn't feel that special, honestly. It had a 5-round burst and only 3 pellets. And frankly, there were just better purple shotgun options in my opinion. In Borderlands 2, however, the Butcher became a pearlescent rarity item with a special ability that occasionally it would just randomly refill your mag, allowing you to shoot for long periods of time without reloading. It was actually, in my opinion, the best overall pearl in the game, and being able to get it in multiple elements just made it that much better. Obtaining a good Butcher, however, was a chore. It could world drop from midgets or tubbies, or you could even do a full run of Digishark Peak and kill oh my my god, what the hell, for a 12.5% chance at one. Every time I think about farming something like this, it just reminds me what a mess in-game farming is on Borderlands 2. I love the game, but man, it is such a pain to farm some stuff. It's a great gun on there though. Then on Borderlands 3, we have the opposite problem. The Butcher returns, but now it's one of the easiest legendary items in the game to get. Simply go to Skywell 27 and kill Dinkobot on any level with or without Mayhem on, and he drops a Ludogram. Now switch your game to Mayhem 11, go to Sanctuary, turn in that Ludogram, and you have a 25% chance for a Butcher. So ideally, you want to grab like 10 to 20 Ludograms, turn them all in at once, and get multiple Butchers. Like the Borderlands 2 Butcher, this one in 3 is a powerhouse and arguably one of the best overall weapons in Borderlands 3. Extremely high fire rate, ammo regen, and a front-facing Hyperion shield while aiming down sights. This one is a no-brainer to me. The Borderlands 3 version is miles ahead of the other two. Even the pearlescent version in Borderlands 2, I'm sorry, the Borderlands 3 version is just much better. So should the Butcher return in Borderlands 4? Absolutely. This is one of those guns that it just feels like it belongs in Borderlands, and please make it as good as the Borderlands 3 version. Up next is the Hellfire, one of the strongest overall weapons in Borderlands 1. The Hellfire absolutely shreds. I admit it took me way too long to appreciate this bad boy, as I was obsessed with the double anarchy, but the Hellfire is just the king of Borderlands 1 SMGs. The only downsides are that it's locked to fire for the element, and like most Borderlands 1 items, it's a world drop only, so good luck obtaining the thing. The Borderlands 2 Hellfire is also exceptional. It's actually one of my favorite SMGs in Borderlands 2 as well. It drops from Scorch and Frostburn Canyon, so you can get it fairly early on, and it will carry you for quite a bit. It even returned in the pre-sequel, where it was pretty much identical to the Borderlands 2 version. In Borderlands 3, they absolutely massacred my boy. It actually pisses me off that they switched to a doll manufactured SMG and that it's insanely weak, especially since it's near impossible to obtain this thing on normal mode. It drops from Jabbermogwai in the Voracious Canopy on Eden 6, but that's 2/3 of the way through the game, and his drop rate on normal mode with no Mayhem on is so low that even lootlemon.com just lists it as less than 10%, and nobody actually knows for sure how low that percentage is. From my experience of trying to get it, I'd say it's probably like 1%, maybe. And a drop rate that low for an item this weak is just laughably bad. Do you want a better version of the Hellfire in Borderlands 3? Just get the Embers Purge from the Handsome Jackpot, and it just melts everything. That's really what the Hellfire should have been in this game. But since that's not the Hellfire, the best overall version of the Hellfire easily belongs to Borderlands 1. Should it return? Damn straight. But please make it really good again, Gearbox. On to the Hornet. Now this is a pistol that is usually just good on normal mode and mobbing, but also great on Borderlands 2 for handling Digistruct Peak. But in Borderlands 1, the Hornet had the potential to roll merged with the Dove body, giving it infinite ammo and being labeled as the BLR Hornet on the item card. But before you go hunting for this, keep in mind if you're playing on the newer version of the game, the so-called remastered version, which features the wonderful addition of Memory Leak, that the Dove Hornet cannot drop on that version apparently, only on the original version of the game. Talk about a downgrade. In Borderlands 2, the Hornet, like I said, great for Digistruct Peak, not so great for most other things. I mean, it's an average gun. But in Borderlands 3, the Hornet, well, it's also pretty average. It's great on normal mode, bit weak for endgame. So the best overall Hornet, in my opinion, has to go to Borderlands 1. Should it return? I'm okay if it doesn't, honestly. It's a good gun, but it's replaceable. Up next is my least favorite category of weapons across all of the games: launchers. I don't know why, but I just don't really like launchers. I admit I never really used the Mongol much on Borderlands 1, but I got one for this video and I tested it out. In Borderlands 1, the Mongol is decent, but not really something to use consistently, and there's just not very many circumstances where I feel like using launchers in this game. In Borderlands 2, the Mongol drops from Dukino's mom in Lynchwood and can be pretty powerful multi-projectile launcher. It's not great, but it's worth playing around with. Title of your sex tape. In Borderlands 3, the Mongol is average at best. Not really much I can say positive about it, other than it's a lot easier to get in Borderlands 3 than the other games. So honestly, there's no real winner for the best version of the Mongol, so I'd say the least bad version, probably Borderlands 2. Should it return? Nah, probably not. Let this thing die, Gearbox. Up next is the Ogre. In Borderlands 1, this was a decent assault rifle, and if you were lucky, like astronomically lucky, you could get yourself a hybrid version called the Ajax Ogre. You'll know you got it if it's listed as the AR590 Ogre. In Borderlands 2, the Ogre returned, but this time you didn't need an astronomically rare variant to have fun with it. You did, however, need to defeat Warlord Slog in Merlin's Temple and the Assault on Dragon Keep DLC for a 21.5% chance to get one. However, once you had any Ogre, it was clear why this was worth the farm. It's a high fire rate, great explosive damage. This made this one of the best assault rifles in Borderlands 2, which we have to talk about that though. It's kind of a low bar because assault rifles in Borderlands 2 got a nerf early on and they never really recovered from that. So most assault rifles in that game just feel very, very weak, unfortunately. The Ogre returned in Borderlands 3. Once again, it changed manufacturers. Why do you do this, Gearbox? For real. It was Atlas in Borderlands 1, Torg in Borderlands 2, and finally Vladoff in Borderlands 3. Like, are these manufacturers like selling the proprietary license for these things or something? Had they kept it as a Torg, it likely would have been just one of the best assault rifles in Borderlands 3. But even despite this odd change, the Ogre can still be very capable with the right build. So my pick for which game did it best is probably Borderlands 2, but then you got the Borderlands 1 Ajax Ogre, which would be the true best variant, and that one's great. And honestly, I'm kind of shocked by how badass the Borderlands 3 version is. So let's just call this one a three-way tie. Should it come back? I'm good without it. Up next, the Skullmasher, probably one of the most iconic weapons in the franchise, a Jacob sniper that deals amazing crit damage, making it live up to its name. In Borderlands 1, the Skullmasher is one of the best snipers, and it truly gives you that powerful feeling as you pop heads. In Borderlands 2, the Skullmasher is very hard to obtain, dropping randomly as a world drop, or if it doesn't fall through the floor, you can get one from Son of Mothrak or Rakanoth, both with a very low 5% drop chance though. But it was worth it, even though in OP levels this gun just doesn't quite hold up so well, and it's not really so much of a one-shot headshot kind of gun anymore. It also returned again in the pre-sequel where it was a massive pain to obtain, but still a great weapon. In Borderlands 3, the Skullmasher returns in the second DLC, Guns, Love, and Tentacles, as a drop from the Invincible version of Ista, and please read that with heavy quotes around the word invincible, as Ista does not deserve that title. However, the Skullmasher is worthy of being a raid boss drop in Borderlands 3, as this absolutely is the strongest version of the gun so far. They added the mechanic of Jacob's crits ricocheting to other enemies in Borderlands 3, and that takes this gun up yet another notch as well. So the clear winner for this one is the Borderlands 3 variant, and should it return? Abso-freaking-lutely. And please make it as good as the Borderlands 3 version again. Up next, we got the Sledge's shotgun. This is kind of an iconic weapon across the Borderlands franchise. It's one of those guns that just feels like it has to be there. In Borderlands 1, this is one of the first purple unique items you can find, dropping 100% of the time from Sledge himself, which meant that basically everybody had this thing at some point, and most of us used it. It's a very strong shotgun with the ability to knock enemies back, and that made this gun a lot of fun to use in the first game. In Borderlands 2, it returned as a legendary bandit weapon and could drop from Smash Head in the fridge. Still strong, still fun to use, but the burst mechanic ruins it a little bit in my opinion. Regardless, it's actually better than a lot of people realize. It also made a return in the pre-sequel as a scav manufactured weapon, only obtainable as a world drop or from the grinder. In Borderlands 3, however, the Sledge's shotgun returns to Jacobs as the manufacturer, and it drops from Hot Carl and Devil's Razor. It once again fires as fast as you can pull the trigger and has a chance to knock enemies back, but for some reason they kept the Bandit 2-round burst effect, but also didn't include the standard Jacobs ricochet mechanic of other Borderlands 3 Jacobs weapons, making this one nowhere near as good as the original in my opinion. Fun bonus fact about this gun, it made an appearance in the movie Ready Player One in the big fight scene, as you can see right here. So the easy winner here is the Borderlands 1 Sledge's shotty. That's right, the purple version wins this round. Should it return? Yes. I kind of feel like the Sledge's shotgun, especially since it's appeared in Ready Player One and it's been in every game, you know, I just feel like it needs to come back. The TK's Wave in Borderlands 1 was an interesting purple unique weapon, and frankly I found it a pain in the ass to use. I know some players love this thing, but I just can't stand it, I'm sorry. First obtainable as a green variant and as a mission reward from TK himself, then later obtainable after level 50 from Scar as a purple variant. Neither is fun to use in my opinion because of how the projectiles fly. Basically, if you're not right up on an enemy, I feel like your odds of hitting them are basically zero. The Wave returned as a mission reward from the quest Uncle Teddy in Borderlands 2, and this time it returned as the tidal wave instead of the TK's wave. Same issue with the firing pattern in this one for me, and the fact that you have to choose this or the Lady Fist as your reward for that mission means that most people are not choosing this one. In Borderlands 3, however, the wave became a legendary and has both prefix options, tidal and TK's, and Gearbox decided to become comedians by buffing the TK's version to crazy damage while leaving the tidal version as just the worst pile of dog crap shotgun in the game. The TK's wave in Borderlands 3 got a 233% damage buff, think Hellwalker levels of damage, and a projectile speed increase, and you obtain it as a 15% drop chance from dump truck very early on in the droughts, meaning that you can use this thing for probably a good 20 levels if you want to, and you can get it like level 5. It's also available in fire and shock variants, giving you even more power early in the game. So the clear winner here has to be the Borderlands 3's TK's wave, not the tidal wave. Throw that thing in the grinder. Oh, there is no grinder in Borderlands 3. Should the TK's wave return? I mean, it's named after TK, and we kind of got to honor our guys, so sure, bring the TK's back. Finally, we have the Unforgiven. In Borderlands 1, the Unforgiven Masher reigned supreme, a very strong pistol, basically a sniper in pistol format, capable of one-tapping most basic enemies and outputting serious damage on bosses and badasses. It featured 100% crit damage as well. In Borderlands 2, the Unforgiven returned as a pearlescent, and they lowered the crit damage to 75%. It being a pearlescent meant you could only get it from loot midgets, tubbies, the peak, or as a random drop very rarely, but sadly this gun fires even slower than the Borderlands 1 version, does less crit damage, and just doesn't feel worthy of being a pearlescent rarity item. In Borderlands 3, the Unforgiven goes back down to being a legendary, and this time it has a staggering 432% crit damage bonus. That's right. That's not a typo, 432%. It still fires crazy slow, but that crit damage can be transferred to another gun via something that we call crit swapping. Basically apply a bunch of Torgue sticky rounds to an enemy's crit spot, then swap to this gun before those sticky rounds explode, and all of those stickies will get 432% bonus crit damage. It's crazy broken, but it can be a lot of fun. One other amazing thing about the Borderlands 3 version is this reload animation. Just godly. So really the Borderlands 1 version is the best to use as intended, but the Borderlands 3 version is the strongest overall for manipulating damage. So I'm going to call this one a tie between those two. So there you have it, guys. Now let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you agree with my assessments on which version of each one was the best, and which recurring weapon would you like to see make a return, if not all of them? Obviously there were some weapons that didn't make the list because they did not appear in every single one of the mainline games, so I figured I'd just go ahead and shout out a few of the most notable ones real quick. The Becca, the Maggie, the Heartbreaker, Crit, Hail, Babymaker, Lyuda, Conference Call, Creamer, Flacker, Hive, Infinity, Sandhawk, Sawbar, Shredifire, Slowhand, Storm, and of course the Unkempt Herald, which I would love to see make another return in the next game. Be sure to hit subscribe if you haven't already. With Borderlands 4 just around the corner, you can expect guides, walkthroughs, tips, tricks, and more from this channel. Thanks for watching, guys. Take care.